Okay, I think we're about to go. Okay, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And welcome to Blue Rock Talk, Earth's most interesting conversations. Hello everybody, I'm Connie Willis. This is our launch. This is premiere show right now. This is our first live real show of what's happening with Blue Rock Talk. Thank those of you that have tuned in tonight and those that you will tune in later, because not everybody can stay up at this time. I totally get it. It's a little bit earlier though. For those of you that don't know who I am, Connie Willis, born and bred in Louisville, Kentucky, moved on to live all around Florida and also in Philadelphia. Back here in Louisville, Kentucky, being a caretaker to my mom. She's doing fantastic. And here I am starting a YouTube channel. You've probably seen me maybe on QVC, HSN, Speed Vision, TNN, CMT. It goes on. There's a lot of places I've worked. But you probably, because you're tuned into Blue Rock Talk, you've probably heard me on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie on the nights that are weekends that I get to fill in, or nights that maybe he got to take off. So I thank you for joining me. Initial show, please, while you're here, subscribe if you haven't already. We got people over on Facebook watching us. That's also over in the corner. You can see kind of the set. You can see the green screen. You can see how it's all put together. Hello, Facebook friends. But I want my Facebook friends to now come on over to YouTube. Connie Willis. Go to the YouTube Blue Rock Talk with Connie Willis, and you'll watch the live event, and you'll see what you're missing on Facebook, because there's all sorts of neat effects that my YouTubers get. Please subscribe while you're here. Hit that little bell notification so that you'll know when other neat events are going to be coming up. And you're going to hear my little birdie Batman throughout the night. It is what it is. So tonight, my first guest, I wasn't going to do anything until I had him as my first guest, and he agreed to do it on short notice, and that is Dr. David JACOBS. David has been in the UFO abduction and now hybrid world for a long time, researching it. We're going to find out his history on that, his experience of what he's learned, and actually, I guess, what's next for him too. Really excited about this. So please stick around. We'll be right back. Okay, about ready here. Once again, welcome back to Blue Rock Talk with Connie Willis, Earth's most interesting conversations, people, places, and things. We're going to be roaming all around the countryside, and we're going to be talking to people that have all sorts of interesting things going on. Could be Bigfoot, it could be UFOs, it could be remote viewing, it could be medicinal marijuana and cures, and it goes on. And some things that we thought maybe weren't interesting or maybe never knew anything about it. The astral rim, out-of-body experiences. You let me know. And don't think that you have to be somebody as well known as Dr. David Jacobs. You can be somebody that experienced something, and I want to talk to you. Look at this. I got a little bitty gnat here in the room that also wants to talk. Hey, I'll let you stay there. I'm not going to smash it. It's come for the live launch. So I do want to give a shout out to a few people. Tom Yamarone, better known as Yams, Bigfooter for sure, and he loves to sing. He's a great guy, very funny. He recently had a stroke and he's in rehab. I think he's still in rehab now. So Yams, hey, shout out to you. Hope you're feeling better. You know you've got a lot of support in the Bigfoot world as well as a whole lot of other people. By the way, if you're watching the show, if you've joined, you're following, you're liking, you're commenting, and you're subscribing, guess what you are? You're a Blue Rocker. A Blue Rocker is a viewer and a lover of Blue Rock Talk, but you're also someone who's in the know. A lot of people are not awake, and there's other people that are not even knowledgeable that they're awake. So a Blue Rocker is someone in the know. That's who you are. Be proud of it. And our little meet and greet, is always one of these, okay? Just, right? I know, I've stolen it, but let's bring it back. It says something good, right? Also, I want to say a shout out to Squatchman and Son of Squatchman. They were the last video that I put on, and actually my first feature video that was really made for Blue Rock Talk. And it's an experience of Bigfoot. So it's not your typical Bigfoot video. It's about 22 minutes, and it's really just the experience of it. There's pictures of a hotspot that is Squatchman and Son of Squatchman's hotspot, and it's audio. And you watch, and you listen, and you decide. That's how I put that together. And it's very, very interesting stuff, too. That's my last video. It's basically under Squatchman and Son of Squatchman. Also, a shout out to Will Champion. He was one of the last guys that I interviewed on Coast to Coast, and that was kind of the conspiracy area, and I got a lot more new people following me because of it, because that's just a whole nother thing outside of even paranormal or anything interesting. Conspiracy is all in its own self, right? So shout out to Will for helping me with that. And also, again, to all you Blue Rockers out there, I really appreciate that you're a part of the show. Again, please subscribe while you're here. Like and join anything else that you see down below in the description that shows where you can learn more about where Blue Rock Talk is. Eventually, I'm going to be roaming around, and hopefully I'll be in your neighborhood, and we can talk to you and put you live on Blue Rock Talk as well. So let's get on to the first interview that we have. I'm very excited, once again, like I said, to bring on friend, author, speaker, father, researcher. I think I may have repeated, but it's Dr. David M. Jacobs, and I'm very happy to bring him on. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Connie. I appreciate it.
I am so happy that you went ahead and could make it for tonight, because I was going to put it off for another week if not. So I'm very happy that we could start the show.
Well, I'm all yours.
That's what he said. Okay, and that's what you said. Sorry, I'm a Family Guy lover. All right, so David, I've talked to you many times before. I was lucky enough to be someone that got to hang out with you. It was 4 or 5 days. I think I was living in Florida at the time. I flew up there, stayed in a hotel, and got to spend 4 or 5 days with you, learning everything you've been doing, watching your work, met your wife, met your cats, got to see part of that big, humongous home that you live in, and I just had a blast with you. I think we could have talked forever and ever. You are a good conversationalist. And then later on, at one point, I got to hang out with you with Bud Hopkins. And we've kept in touch ever since, and I appreciate your friendship. And I know at one point you were telling me about the latest book called Walking Among Us, and it wasn't out yet. I couldn't wait for you to get it out. And I remember asking you, because I had actually moved up to Philly at the time, and I'd ask you, is it out? Is it out yet? And you'd say, well, I'm on chapter 8 and it's in my pocket. And I was like, no, you need to save that somewhere else so nothing will happen to it. You finally got it out, and I'm finally able to talk to you. So here, let's go ahead and do this. If you want to say anything about your background, go for it. Because I know that you were a professor at Temple University, but they said you would never get tenure. And
I got tenure, but
you did?
Right. Well, when you do this research, let me just say, by way of background, the academic and scientific community thinks that the UFO and UFO abduction phenomenon, and especially the UFO abduction phenomenon, is total, complete nonsense. It's just crazy. It makes no sense to them whatsoever, mainly because they are ignorant. It's not that they're stupid, but they are ignorant, and they're stupid too because they don't want to shed their ignorance. They don't want to learn. So I guess they're both. But I knew that once I started doing abduction research in the mid-1980s, I knew that my career would never achieve what they call full professor. The way in which academia works is you come in as a professor, a new professor, and you're called an assistant professor. That means you're not really an assistant, it's just a title, but it means that you're a regular professor, but you don't have tenure. After you're at a university for 6 years, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, the faculty then votes for you to be given tenure. If you are given tenure, and it goes to the faculty and then various committee meetings and various deans, and goes up to the president of the university and maybe even to the Board of Regents and all that, and even the governor in some states. If you are granted tenure, you can't be fired for any reason virtually, and you're called associate professor. If you keep writing books, keep working, and become nationally known in your field of history or English or whatever it is, then that whole process starts again, and for being called a full professor or just plain professor, and that goes all the way up through the ranks as well, and that's called. And I knew that I already had tenure as an associate professor, and when I started doing abduction research, but I knew that I would never make full. That was never going to happen.
I got you.
And I was correct. Now, that means that your salary is not increased appreciably. It means that, it has prestige meanings mainly, but there is the salary component as well. And I knew that that my salary was going to stay fairly close to what it was years ago, and so. But it was worth it. I went in eyes open. I tried to be full, and I knew it wasn't going to work, and it didn't. But the academic community and scientific community just thinks that the abduction phenomenon is total and complete nonsense. It's just ridiculous. It can't be happening. It's beyond their abilities to think about. And here's the oddity. It is beyond their abilities to even ask about.
Oh.
I've said this many times, and I'll repeat it because it is so astonishing. The number of scientists who came over to my office to yell at me for besmirching the name of Temple University because I was doing this work and I was having more publicity than any other person at Temple University outside of the sports program. The number of professors who came to me to engage with me and say, why don't you wise up, you total idiot, and things like that I would listen to, the number of them was 0. Not a single scientist ever came to my office and said, what's this all about? Why are you crazy? Or words to that effect. Not one.
And what a shame. And it's not just in the educational world, you know. I mean, it's everywhere. But I understand what you're saying. And
well, it's scientists and academics, and it is everywhere also.
Yeah.
I mean, now there's a lot of people out there who are abductees, and they know it, and so there's an awful lot of people who've seen UFOs, and they know that too, and so are therefore amenable to the idea that there's beings inside the UFOs and all that, but it's worse now in the scientific and academic community than ever before in history. There's never been anything like this. It's absolutely awful now. For example, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, which was the first UFO organization that I enrolled in, so to speak, in around 1966 or 67, whenever it was had a list of researchers and PhDs and MDs who they had as consultants. The National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena also had lists of consultants. PhDs, MDs, LLDs. The Mutual UFO Network had lists of consultants. I gave a paper in 2002 at the Mutual UFO Network's annual symposium proceedings, and it was called "How to Build an Academic Community for UFOs." And what I did is I went back and I counted up how many people with advanced degrees beyond a BA had lent their name publicly to UFO organizations to study UFOs. And I came up with a minimum of 1,200 people over the years. Now, there are no lists of consultants anymore. The Mutual UFO Network even stopped their list of consultants. There aren't any consultants. There aren't any PhDs and MDs and DDDs and AAAs and all the rest of that stuff that are involved with the subject. There's so few of them now. It's just awful. The situation is terrible when it should be extremely important, in my opinion, and everybody in the world should be aware of it. But now it's less and less academics are involved with it than ever before in history.
Well, how did you even get involved in it?
Well, I've told this story about 18 million times.
And guess what? You get to tell it 18 million and one. Yay!
I like to tell it because it always brings back fond memories.
Well, you can keep all these things brief because you know that so many people have heard you already. They already know your story. I just want to catch up some of the people that have never heard you and that will be new to Blue Rock Talk. That way we can get into the good stuff of your latest book and talk about hybrids. But I just want you to set it up enough and to know where people will know, where you're coming from and how you got there.
Brevity is not my strong point.
I know it. And you know what? It's so funny because you and I, we have this great rapport where we like to laugh about things too. Some people go, it's so serious, how can you laugh? But we have a good time, You gotta, it's not all so serious. You gotta kind of have fun. Some of it's kind of fun,
Well, it started out when I found myself on a table on a flying saucer, and no.
See what I mean?
I attended a conference at Northwestern University put on by my friend Alan Hynek, who wrote the introduction to my very first book, and Alan Hynek had been the chief UFO investigator for the Air Force from 1949, I guess it was, until the Air Force closed down its program. And even then, for a couple of years afterwards, he was still he was still on call for them. He had a UFO conference. He became a believer. He was a staunch debunker when he first began in the 40s, but then as the evidence mounted, he was smart enough to understand that the evidence was mounting and it just pushed him over the brink. He couldn't stop. He had to realize that people were actually seeing UFOs. And so he put on a conference, and there was a guy there at this conference who I'd never heard of named Bud Hopkins. And Bud Hopkins was about to give a paper about abductions. Now, I knew about Barney, I knew Betty Hill. I didn't know Barney, but I knew Betty Hill, and I knew I knew about a couple of abductions that had happened, but I wasn't much interested in them.
When he came up to give his paper, instead of listening to the paper and wasting my time,
I went out into the hallway with a friend of mine who was a professor of sociology, who knew every joke ever invented by every human in every society since the beginning of time. I went out in the hallway and laughed for an hour with Marcello Truzzi, and instead of listening to Bud Hopkins, who's giving the first paper ever on abductions,
No.
first paper to a scientific group, essentially, and that was it. A year later, Tracy Torme called me up. Now, Tracy Torme is a UFO interested guy. He's a Hollywood director and producer. He did Fire in the Sky and other things. And he's the son of Mel Torme, the singer from the 1940s, who was hugely famous. And he was a friend of mine, and he called me up from New York. He was in New York for some reason. And he said that he knew where the government conspiracy headquarters was in the garden, nobody knew about, but he knew where it was all coming from. But he couldn't talk to me over the phone because, phones, they might be tapped.
That's right.
So he had to come up to New York City, and I said, okay, I'll go up to New York City and hear this. And we sat in the park, in Central Park, because, the walls have ears. So he told me it was the U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey group. I said, okay. It's the only time I ever heard of it. Never again. And that was in 1982. So he said after he told me this and we chatted a bit in the park, he hailed the cab and he said, well, come on, let's go down to Bud Hopkins. I said, well, I don't think I want to go meet Bud Hopkins. I got better things to do. I got to go home. I got to walk. I got to
wash my hair, my dog.
She said, no, come on, he's a nice guy, I like him. I said, no, I don't want to do that. He said, come on. He opens the cab door and sort of pushes. Okay, I'll come down. So I go down the 16th Street and 8th Avenue, and the first thing that I noticed was that he had forgotten Hopkins' address. So we had to go and look and see if we could find the name Hopkins beneath doorbells on the outside. And we found it.
In New York. This was New York.
Well, it wasn't all. He lived near the corner, so when we let off at that corner, it wasn't all that. It was hard to find.
Okay.
And down comes Bud Hopkins, he had to walk downstairs. We go into his house, and the first thing I notice in his house is it's filled with fantastic drawings and paintings. He is an artist who was a member of what they call the New York School. That is to say, it was a school of art that became named, because it became so famous, it was later, many years later, called the New York School. And his best friend was an artist named Franz Klein, who's a world-class, monumental artist. So there's a Franz Klein on his wall, there's Bud Hopkins' paintings all over, there's a Cézanne drawing, a Renoir drawing, a Degas drawing on his wall.
Excellent.
There's, it was just astonishing. And he was, the first thing he did was he grabbed a hold of my book, UFO Controversy, and he had me sign it. And I knew that he was a person of discriminating taste when he did that. And he was extremely kind and gracious. Yes, and so we spent an hour with him, and afterwards I go downstairs, and we're on a little walkway to go to the sidewalk, and he says to me, what are you doing this summer? And I said, well, we just had a baby, and we used to go to Bar Harbor, Maine, but now it's too long a drive for the baby, so we're going to a little town in Cape Cod called Wellfleet. He looked at me and he said, Wellfleet? I own a house in Wellfleet, he said.
Whoa.
I go to Wellfleet every summer. I spend all summer in Wellfleet, in my house there. Destiny. When you come up, look me up. And so Irene, my wife, and I went up to Wellfleet with our baby, and we did look up Bud Hopkins, who introduced me to abductees, who I've never met an abductee in my life, and oddly, they seem to be perfectly normal people.
Right.
And I then started coming up to his house and going to abductee meetings that he had, and talking with abductees, and and sitting behind him and watching him do hypnosis with abductees, and I realized this was important, as I tell people, it's been downhill ever since for me since that time.
That's when you became known. Hey, I got to tell you, you guys became best friends. And
he was my closest friend for until he died. He was we had things in common that most people don't have in common in terms of the abduction phenomenon. I've been doing this work constantly and consistently, and so he taught me how to do it essentially, and I did it.
And you guys didn't necessarily agree on everything, did you?
No, not everything. Most things we did, though, I must say. None of us could find anything that had to do with the phenomenon and religion, or the phenomenon and spirituality, or the phenomenon and raising consciousness, or anything like that. It was just like the old Dragnet show used to say, just the facts, ma'am.
That's right.
Just the facts of what was going on with people, and that's it. And so, having said that, I must say that I thought I was, in the very first session I ever did, I thought I was pretty hot stuff. And I was gonna do this because I'd sat next to Bud Hopkins for the past 4 years, and watched him do it, and I'd read up on hypnosis and all the rest of that stuff, and so I did my first hypnosis with some young woman I call Melissa, and she, I was scared to death. I remember, oh my God, I'm going to do it, oh my God. And I wrote out an induction on a 3x5 card, and I put it in my hand. And she laid down on my couch in the living room downstairs, and I sat next to her in a chair, sort of a little bit behind her head so that she wouldn't see my hand with the card. I read out this induction just to make sure every word was perfect, and she'd been heavily into channeling, so she just went right into this hypnotic state, and she told me this story. This was, I've told this story a lot, but this is what really helped me enormously. She told me the story of how she, with a little girl, and she bent down she had a friend with her in a park here in the Philadelphia area, and she felt arms around her waist. This is the middle of the day. She went up into a UFO, and that's all she remembered, essentially. So we did that one. That's something I would not do today because it was the first session, and you don't do a 7-year-old, but I didn't know. So she was taken on board by a guy who was wearing a page boy haircut. I had to look on Google later and find out what is a page boy haircut, and his name was Cosmo. She recognized him, and she hadn't seen him before. See, and she called him Cosmo, and I thought, okay, and so he put her on a table, took her clothes off, did this to her and that to her, and this to her and that to her, and examined her. And even it was a reproductive examination. She was very, very embarrassed to talk about, and then he got her off the table, took her down a hall, and she met a gray alien, and she had to put her hands on the gray alien's head. And when she did that, she felt love and warmth and affection coming from him. When she took her hands off, went away. And then he kept going with her into a room. There was a council of aliens who were sitting there, and he said that when she grew up, she was going to be intelligent and beautiful and wonderful, and she was going to have a wonderful life. And then they took her into the back to the other room and put her clothes back on and brought her back. And that was it. And and we talked about it afterwards a little bit. And she left. And that night, I went upstairs to the little tape recorder that I put next to her, little tape recorder. And when I started listening to it, I could hear my voice just fine, but I couldn't hear anything that she said because she whispered. I literally, this is one of the few times I ever actually broke out into a cold sweat. Oh my God, I've lost it. I've lost this treasure, this jewel, this amazing event. And so I went upstairs to transcribe whatever I could, and I thought, I'll just remember how to do this. I'll remember what she said. I got one line, and I was gone. I couldn't remember what she said. But she came back for a number of other sessions, and after several months, I said, "Now, Melissa, remember that first session we did?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Well, I had a little trouble with the tape recorder, so I felt like a total idiot." And I said, "Can we do that one again?" She said, "Sure." She's in the park. She's looking at a buttercup on the grass or whatever it is. She feels arms around her. Is taken up in a Cosmo page boy haircut. Puts her on a table. Takes her clothes off. Examination, reproductive exam. Very embarrassed to talk about. Puts her clothes back on. Takes her back. I said, "Melissa, remember you talked about how you walked down the hallway and you had to put your hands on the alien's head?" She said, "No, I don't remember that happening." I said, "Well, what about when you went into the other room where there was this council and they said you're going to grow up to be a brave, courageous, and true, a real American and all that sort of stuff?" She said, "I think that happened to my friend Lydia, not to me."
Oh.
That was the single most important gift I ever had, because I knew at that time that I did not have the slightest idea what I was doing. And I then began to put in sort of stops in a way. I put in controls where I swore this was not going to happen to me again. This is me bad, and you know.
Did she make it up and forget about it, or did she just forget about it, or?
No. One happened to her friend Lydia for sure. I won't say the friend's name because although the friend has used her name on television, but I won't. And the other one, she just didn't remember it. No, I don't think that happened to me, you know. And she had made it up, that part, and the other part was from somebody else.
How do you differentiate?
Well, this is called confabulation to a certain extent. It's not quite confabulation, but it is in a way. With confabulation, you're creating a story that you're unawares is being created by your brain, but you think is actually happening to you. You're not trying to deceive anybody. And so I put in fake leading questions to see whether people will bite. And I put in other controls to order them to do things, to see things that aren't there, and see if they'll see things that I just ordered them to see that can't be seen by anybody.
Right.
And so I do that with everybody in the very beginning to see how vulnerable they're going to be to this. And I began to regularize my sessions so that they were very much controlled in terms of being logical and chronological. Goes in a chronological style, and I ask logical questions about what the people have just told me. So if they're in a room at night in a bed and they see a light, I can ask them a question about the light. And if they think there's somebody in the room, I can ask them questions about who's in the room and where they are and how many of them are there. And I can't say aliens because they didn't say that. They're just people. See,
right.
I can't go there. I have to only what they tell me. And so that's. I'm writing a book on how to do hypnosis with abductees now.
Well, that'll be great because that is a very difficult thing to not lead someone and to not, immediately say aliens. You got to let them tell it all. And of course, that's one of the problems that people like you have. Everybody says you let them, and you're the one who's making this up and putting it in their head. I know you've gotten that ridicule.
I did get that. I've gotten that by a woman who I worked with for a couple of years who went completely bonkers on me towards the end. I shouldn't even say that because I'll rile her up again. But there was something seriously wrong with her, and she hounded me for 9.5 years.
Oh, I think I know that story.
Yeah, it was problematic, and she eventually began to say that of the 2 years of hundreds of pages, actually 2,000 pages of testimony that I have from her, I had simply instilled everything in her mind.
Yeah, that was a bad scene for you. I don't know if you want to get into it or not. I don't want to bring that up to you either.
Don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
However, I have a website. You can devote it to it now.
Oh, well, that's good because you know what? I don't even want to go there myself. It's useless. It's terrible that happened to you. I don't believe it at all. Knowing you And, you know, and knowing your wife as well, I mean, you know, if that stuff was true, a wife would be acting a whole lot different, you know, as well.
Yeah.
You know,
no, and
anybody that knows you knows you're not that way. I'm sorry.
Well, it's rare. It's rare because I'm only reacting to what they tell me. In other words, that what they say is causes my reactions. Now, when I have 15 sessions with a person, and the sessions are 2 or 3 hours long, and I talk with them an hour beforehand and an hour afterwards, and I get to know them very well, and or maybe 20 sessions or 30 sessions with them, you know, and it takes several years to do that, or a couple of years or whatever. I know how they're talking, and they know how I'm answering. So it's looser. Mm-hmm. Because I know that they're going to say, if I ask a question that's some sort of a dumbass question, that they're going to react negatively to it, and they're going to say, no, that's not how it happened, or whatever. And so there's more of a give and take that way, but I'm comfortable with that because I've had so many sessions with them, and I know that they will not be led. And not only that, almost everybody who comes to me knows 2 things. They know they don't want to be led by me because of hypnosis. And number 2, they don't want to pick up popular culture and parrot it back to me as if it happened to them, something they've seen on TV or whatever. Right. Almost everybody is aware of those things, and obviously I'm aware of that too. Right. So, but they're hyper vigilant about it as well. But I do a very light form of hypnosis. It's basically relaxation techniques, and people can think to themselves that I'm asking really stupid questions and whether they should even bother to answer, and they'll say to me, I got to go to the bathroom, and I say, okay, get up, go to the bathroom, and there's a bathroom near me and around in the hallway here, and they come back and lay down, and I just keep asking the questions. Say it doesn't matter. And,
so you're not making them quack like a duck or do anything, you know, kiss the person next to them in the seat, you know, you're not doing anything like that.
It's nothing like that. I'm not good enough to be able to do that.
I know, that's some crazy stuff, that's for sure. If you're just now tuning into us, this is Connie Willis, and what you're watching is Blue Rock Talk, Earth's most interesting conversations. And who we have today on our premiere show, the live launch, is Dr. David Jacobs, talking about aliens, the abduction, the hybridization project, and hybrids. In fact, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to get into aliens. So hang with us, stay where you are, and thank you for watching. While you're here, please subscribe. We're back with Blue Rock Talk, Earth's most interesting conversations. Connie Willis here, along with Dr. David Jacobs. Interesting stuff. Those of you that have just tuned in to us, thank you for joining me. It's our live launch, our premiere show, and we've got a lot more in the future coming up for you. Events, research, some surprises I don't want to let you know about, but plenty of interviews, not just by experts as well known as David Jacobs, but also people like you that have a story to tell. It's Earth's most interesting conversations, people, places, and things. And if you've got something interesting, let me know. We'll put you on. Please subscribe while you're here. Let's get back to Dr. David Jacobs and find out, let's go into the hybridization project. Or what is it that determines that someone is an abductee? How, through all the hypnosis that you do, how do you know that's an abductee? And what is their life like?
Right. Well, by the time they get to me and come to my house, they've already filled out a questionnaire. And the questionnaire tells me about unusual experiences that abductees have and other people haven't had necessarily.
And that questionnaire is on your website? It
is on my website at UFO'Abduction.com. No S on the end of abduction, just singular. And I've also talked with them extensively over the phone about their questionnaire, and they had I put them through a sort of an ethical protocol, so to speak. They have to call me. I don't call them. They have to think it over for a couple of days, talk with people who they can trust about it, whether they want to go forward. I give them a long and sort of a strong warning about doing this, and because once you go through this and you find out this actually has been happening to you and it's causing all this other sort of disruptions in your life, you might think, oh, that's why I was 2 hours late going somewhere, and that's why this happened, that's why that happened, and all the rest of that. But the point is that once they realize it is happening, it is permanent. They will never stop that knowledge. The knowledge is with them forever. They are on the verge of changing their lives permanently.
That's opening Pandora's box. You can't go back.
You cannot go back. You can't close that box. And so when they finally come to me, and I get a lot of people that drop out when I tell them things like that. Are you sure you want to do this? You sure you want to change your life permanently forever? And the ones who come to me, are the ones who are really committed to doing this, and they really want to know. It's not just a lark. If it's just a lark, if people are living comfortably and they're living a normal life and everything is fine, I usually don't take them because I don't want to ruin their lives. I don't want to, they have to really sort of be desperate and all that before they get to me, because my aim is to learn and also help people. And so that's the way I look at it as well. That's the way Bud Hopkins looked at it.
Do you find that people freak out once they really know this is occurring, when they really know it, or do you find that people embrace it? And I guess that's where it's you're a contactee or an abductee, right?
Right. Yeah, well, there are, in my opinion, there's no such thing as a contactee. All contactees are by definition abductees.
Right. Right. What I mean by that, for those of you that aren't sure, I think the people that have embraced it or said they like it would like to call themselves contactees, right? Is that correct?
Everybody calls themselves experiencers these days.
Oh, that's right. You're right. That's the other word. That's right.
It's not a word that I like. I dislike the word abductee. Mm-hmm. From the 1980s on, I've tried to think of another word for abductee. I didn't like it in the 1980s, and I don't like it now in whatever year we're in. And but
I can understand that.
But the word experiencer, I think, was coined by my friend John Mack. Experiencer is a non-word. It means nothing. I had a horrible experience today. I turned on the shower and the water was too cold. That was the worst experience I had all morning.
That's true.
Anything is an experience. I found the dime. It was a great experience. So it's a meaningless word, and it's used primarily by what has been called. I heard it last year for the first time. The love and light crowd. This is it's all love. It's all light. It's wonderful. They're here to help us. They're here. It's spiritual. It's religious. It's all that sort of stuff, which is fine with me. And that's okay. If people want to think that, more power to you. I have no problem with that.
But your research has not shown that.
I wish that people would, in fact, tell me that, but they just don't, for the most part. I had one woman, and I've told this story before, too, because it's so astonishing. There was this one woman who was heavily involved with this spiritual consciousness raising, helpful, wonderful, happy aliens that were abducting her consistently. And so I did and this was early on, but did a session with her, and she came to my house and we did a session. And it was in the middle of New York City, and it was at night, and picked her up right off the street. And this to her happened to her, and that happened to her, and this happened to her, and that happened to her. And then they brought her down. It was just standard abduction stuff. She wrote me a letter a couple of weeks later saying she was never coming back to me because she didn't remember what she wanted to remember.
Oh.
What? She's telling me. I'm not telling her, So, but it didn't happen the way she thought it was going to happen.
Right.
And she decided never to come back to me. It was all my fault.
You get blamed for a lot. So the abduction experience, somebody that's an abductee or contactee or experiencer, what is their life like? Well, I don't even think I want to know that. I think I want to get in the nitty gritty because I know I only got you for so long before you want to go to bed. And I want to respect the time that you have because I want you back again in the future and we can always talk to you again. But you want, and a contactee, experiencer or abductee, it happens as a child and it moves all the way through their life. And what actually happens when they're taken? What happens at any age when they're taken? You know, just even getting them out of the house.
Right. Well, first of all, it does happen as a baby and as a child and all the way through their lives. And the reason that person is an abductee is not because they are, quote, chosen, as a lot of people like to think. It's because their mother or their father was an abductee, and the phenomenon is intergenerational. And this is held true for all of the abductees whom I've talked with, who've had mothers or fathers or children. Of course, they had to have a mother or father.
Right.
But
I'm with you.
but that's and Bud Hopkins found this too. This is just the way it's always been. So people are abducted over and over and over and over and over again, all through their lives, and they can be abducted hundreds of times. And I will only examine a few of those events, you know, over the years. But I've been lucky in that I've looked at over 1,000 abduction events, and so I was able to work with some people for many years, and which most people don't do. And I worked with one. I had with one woman. I had over 100 sessions. Now I'm using the word sessions loosely here because sometimes they were done over the phone. She did a lot of sessions with me here, but she lives so far away. We did some over the phone, and then we did some through AOL instant messaging.
Yeah, wow, that's ancient.
It's ancient. But she had so many sessions beforehand. She would just I would ask a question. She would close her eyes. She would think about it, and she would type it out. And it was actually extremely helpful to me and to her. So the problem here is, what was the question again?
I was gonna reiterate it. So the person's in bed.
What happens during?
Yeah, okay. What happens? How are they taken? How do they get out of the house? What? And cars are taken, you know, and they go up in the cars. I've heard it all.
Right. Yep. They're taken out of the house. There's usually aliens in the room. If they're, let's just say, to avoid this business about sleep disturbance causing these UFO fantasies, let's just say they're sitting on the couch watching television.
Oh, okay.
And they're not asleep.
Okay.
And suddenly they know something is wrong and they can't move, and they look over and there's a light coming through their window, and or whatever it is. Maybe there's no light there, but it's in the daytime, and there's beings standing near them, aliens, and then they lead the person. They get the person up. They lead the person towards a window, or maybe to the outside of the house, or whatever it is. If it's towards a window, they go right through the glass window, or right through a wall, or if they live in an apartment, right through the ceiling sometimes, so they can see other people's apartments as they go through it, if you can imagine that, and directly into a UFO. How
does that
technology
happen?
Right, we don't know how this can be. The technology is such that we can't imagine the technology. Although recently I figured out, in the stupidest damned way, that I realized that at night, especially when people see a bluish light coming in through a window and aliens take the person right out through the window, I realized that what they had was there's a number of other things like this where I'm going to jump the gun here. Well, hybrids were going up in a light to the UFO also by themselves. I won't go into that. And I realized that they had a device on board this UFO that somebody had obviously invented a long time ago. And they turned a switch on, and the light would come down to wherever they wanted it to, and it would rearrange the molecules and anything of a solid, and you go right through it, and go straight on up. And it's just this device. And I thought to myself, this is technology that we can actually sort of understand in a bizarre way, and yet it seems like it's so off the wall, beyond us. Now, having said that, I'm almost certainly wrong. But yet, I'd like to think I'm right, because it is a device that was built by somebody, these aliens or whatever, that is used when they need to get somebody out of a house or pull somebody up, on the field or something. And it can be understood. It can be understood. That device can. Other things maybe not.
Well, it makes sense. Even Rendlesham, when people talked about Rendlesham, and they talked about the beam going down and looking where there were weapons and things that they didn't want anybody looking in. Well, that beam's going down. It makes sense to me that they were looking or doing whatever they needed through that beam.
It certainly is possible. My guess is that they were there at Rendlesham Air Force Base in England. When was that? 1980, I guess, or something like that. That we were there. They were there to abduct people. That's my main guess. And in fact, there are several people who have said that they were abducted that evening. But
that's right.
But the fact is, though, that what we're looking at here. Well, let me answer your question.
Yeah. So they get taken up on the ship, and then.
Their clothes are removed. There's a special room. If it's a small UFO, their clothes are removed in a room with a table. Their clothes are on the floor. If it's a large UFO, there's a room where their clothes are removed and taken away by gray aliens, and they sit on a ledge in a round room, and there's usually other people that are waiting their turn to be taken through a hallway into another room with tables. When that happens, a gray alien comes in, takes clothes off a person, then we'll lead the person around in a hallway onto their table. The tables are not tables as we would know them. They are part of the floor. They are slabs. They are rectangular squares, so to speak. They come right out of the floor. There's nothing There's nothing underneath the table. It's not really a table. It's just a large rectangular wedge, so to speak. That's there are gray aliens there. Some are smaller, some are taller. The taller ones do more specific procedures. The smaller ones do less specific procedures. They, in the process, because this is a phenomenon that is based on essentially growing hybrids. This is a reproductively based phenomenon. They take sperm from men, they take eggs from women, they take ova from women. And there's, I won't go into all the different ways they do this, but we know virtually all of the ways. And they have instruments that pass over people's bodies. We know nothing about the instruments. They have different things that come out of the wall that pass over people's bodies. Sometimes they'll take people and they'll put them inside some sort of an enclosed space. We have no knowledge of what these things are or what they do. People can guess at what they are, but they don't know either. The aliens don't tell them. They're taken off the table then and brought down the hallway again to take into another room. There might be babies in jars, floating fetuses. They've
they look like humans, or?
Yeah, they look human, sort of. Not completely human, but eventually they're taken out of the jars. They grow into young children, and they grow into a little older children, and then adolescents, and then adults. And what you get of those who are hybrids are, well, let me just backtrack here. They take sperm and eggs. They put the sperm and eggs together, and they take something else and they add something to that mixture.
So the egg and the sperm are both human, and then they add something else.
My guess is that they add something else, I think. and that something else is DNA from an alien of some sort. I'm guessing on this because the babies that are then created.
So they're not just taking the egg, a human egg or human sperm, and then an alien something. You're saying they're combining the male and female human part and then alien. That's...
Yes, and then it's reinserted into the woman who carries it for around 9 or 10 weeks. After that, at around 9 or 10 weeks, before she begins to show, they then remove it and place it into, it's now a fetus, and they place it into a jar of brown liquid. Those are liquid nutrients, and those babies will have their nutrition done through their skin. And that is how gray aliens have their nutrition as well. We virtually never see gray aliens. Now, these are gray aliens I'm talking about, not all the other ones that are on board. But we virtually never see them eat anything ever, and there is no way that they can eat. They don't have an abdomen apparatus. They don't have a throat apparatus to swallow. They don't have tongues. They don't, and they shouldn't have mouths. And is
that the big-eyed gray ones you're talking about?
Yeah, right, exactly. So when the hybrids are born, what you'll see is big-eyed hybrids, but with little tiny whites in them, and a little tiny mouth and a little tiny nose and a little tiny ears, because gray aliens don't have anything except holes for ears, a slit for a mouth, 2 holes for a nose. But there's a spectrum of the babies, and they start with being very alien-looking, and yet having straggly hair, with some whites in their eyes. Other aspects of their bodies might be more human-like. And as you go along, they get more and more human, different species of these hybrids, different variations, gradations of these hybrids, until they look absolutely human.
Wow.
Absolutely human.
Amazing. I mean, we do that stuff ourselves here, not just, doing different things with animals along the way, but even with grapes and wine. They take the different grapes, add them together, and they just take them and they on and on until they get a great wine. It's so, it's interesting to hear it this way.
Yeah, and now the whole phenomenon is reproductively oriented. That is what everything is about. And when people are taken on board and put on a table and brought into another room, sometimes they don't go into a room where there's just sometimes they're taken into a room where they see hybrid babies, and they have to hold babies and put their hands on baby skin. Sometimes they're taken into a room where they're seeing toddlers, 2-3 years old, playing with little toys and that sort of stuff. The toys are odd. I once wrote a paper on hybrid toys and games, if you can imagine that.
Oh, I'd love to see that. Oh my gosh, I want to see it.
It was published in International UFO, in the MUFON Journal, MUFON Journal, and hybrid toys and games. And it's hard to imagine, even when I think about it, I did it myself, that you could write an article about hybrid toys and games, what kind of toys and games, how do they play them, and all the rest of the stuff.
Excellent.
It might be on my website too. I can't remember. I never look at it, so it might be there. Who knows?
I'll look.
And
so they're seeing different things. They see these babies and they're touching them. Let me ask you about that touching them. Is that so that they can actually feel love and nurturing?
Don't know. Do not know. One would assume that because we're human. But the touch is extremely important, so much so that one person, Karen Morgan, refused to put her hand on a baby, and they grabbed her hand and they forced it on the baby's abdomen, and held it there for a while, and that was enough. And I thought to myself, that doesn't sound too nurturing to me, you know what I mean?
Right. That's true. That's interesting.
So, as these children grow up, the abductees will deal with them, not the same ones, different groups, because and they'll deal with kids who are 9 and 10 years old, and teach them about different things on Earth. How do you look at a book? how do you? I've told this story before, so if you've heard it, close your ears. But the one that I have in my latest book, Walking Among Us, is this woman who's standing in front of a group of kids, and there's a picture of a dog on the wall. And they ask her, "What's a dog for? What's a dog for?" "Well, a dog is for companionship and they're fun to be with and play." "Do you eat dog?" No.
Not in this country.
You're right. She didn't realize that they do eat them in China.
Sorry, yeah, right.
But no, don't eat dog. Next picture's a goat. Kids ask her, now they're all sitting on these little squares. Kids ask her, "What's a goat for?" She said, "Well, you can get milk and cheese from a goat, and do you eat goats?" She said, "No, I'm a vegetarian, but other people eat goats." Yes, they eat. So she's teaching them sort of piece by piece what some animals are like, and you got to figure that they're probably learning an awful lot about Earth over the years as they're having one abductee after another come in and probably talk to them, and so this is a part of their lives to a certain extent.
Wow! So you're saying not only are they abducted since a child, but then they go through the hybridization project. But then at one point, when you think they don't want, they're too old for that, now they're teaching. Now the abductee is still good for teaching them how to be a human, is what you're saying.
Right. When they're children, they will play with hybrid children on board.
Wow.
And they will teach hybrid children how to play certain games, and the hybrid children will teach them how to play with their ultra high technology toys, which will jump up into the air at their will and then come back down and that sort of stuff.
Psychic type things.
Right, psychic stuff, neurological stuff, which abductees can't do. They can't do that, no matter how much they try. But no, actually, I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at my research and read one of my books again and see what I said in there. But anyway, the fact is, though, that but as adults, they come in and they teach these hybrid children later on, what Earth is like. When the hybrids grow up, eventually, what I've seen happen over the years is that the hybrids are now beginning to do jobs that the gray aliens did. So that people will describe, there's a hybrid helper here in the room with the gray aliens, he's doing this, he's doing that, whatever. And then over the years, they would say, well, there's several hybrids here, and they're doing this, and there's some gray aliens around too watching. And then I began to hear that the hybrids were doing the whole thing, and there weren't any gray aliens around. Now you have to understand that this is a reproductively oriented phenomenon on a lot of different levels. As the years go on, the population of the Earth increases enormously, and this is it's not only intergenerational, it is global. It's a global phenomenon. In the United States, we have nothing special here at all about the abduction phenomenon. It is here, it is there, it is in Timbuktu, it's in all over Asia, it's everywhere. It's in what's the name of that country that nobody has ever heard of? Canada. That's it. It's in Canada. It's everywhere. So the population of the Earth has exploded in the last century, particularly since World War II. And you need more abductees because it's intergenerational. More people are having kids. There's more and more people in the world to have kids.
Right.
And so it's growing. And so they're using hybrids now. And what I've read, what I talked about in Walking Among Us, they're also using abductees to do abduction procedures on people when they come on board.
Wow, that's interesting.
And to help find abductees. I want to. It's a whole other world that I touched on. I didn't want to go too much.
No, I want you to go there. So when you get to that point, I'm ready.
in the book, I felt so bad in writing that, because I know that the people who are going to read that book, who are, there was 14 people in the book, not all of them were doing that, but there were some who would recognize themselves and would know that they were, of course they remembered it anyway, but I felt it was very uneasy for me to write that stuff. I did not like writing it, but I had to. Anyway, so eventually what happens is they have grown hybrids that really look human. They are human. They are perfectly reflective of the average in everything. Average weight, average height, average everything. They do not stand out in a crowd. They look totally human. They are not distinguishable from any other human at all. End of story. Except for one thing that's not the end of the story. It's just a little addendum to the story. They can control us neurologically, and we cannot control them. And without that ability for all aliens, all of them, there would be no abduction phenomenon. And that means that they can make us see, think, hear, or do anything that they want.
That's amazing. Well, that's like, okay, when they take you, they like knock you out in some way, and then you never remember it at all, right? And even during it, you cannot even move, right?
Correct.
It's like a sleep paralysis, but you're walking around and doing whatever they want. You're a zombie. I mean, that's, to me, where zombies came from. That's the true zombies.
Yeah, you're under neurological control. Without that, there wouldn't be any abduction phenomenon. As I could point out, people would simply have a Glock 45 underneath their pillow, and when the gray aliens came in and they were out of control, the guy would just blow their head off. I mean, you can't. The environment has to be controlled, and the people have to be controlled, and they all are, not 100% of the time, because every once in a while somebody will break loose. So what the hell am I doing here? Where am I? And run down the hall, on board a UFO, and that happens every once in a while. But they bring him under control again, and he'll forget everything as soon as the event is over. And they don't have to instill some sort of "you will forget." That is right. There's never been. I would thought in the early beginnings when I first started working with Bud that we should be hearing this business about you will forget everything because they're being hypnotized in some way and it's under control. But in fact, we never hear it, ever. Now, sometimes abductees will say, "Well, they told me that I will never remember," or something else. Say something like that. But when they do remember it in a hypnosis, it's just a comment that these aliens will say, "Well, you'll never remember this anyway, so blah 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 blah." And then they remember that one little part. You won't remember this, and they think that was an order. But no. It's just part of the phenomenon itself. These beings are really, really advanced neurologically. They really know what they're doing. They're very, very, very good at what they're doing.
I remember you telling a story, and I don't know if you just told it to me. It's in your new book that you mentioned it. But you had said that the hybrid was taking the guy to a ball game, and at one point the guy said, well, and it was teaching him how to watch a ball game and what you do as a sports fan.
Right,
and one of the things was, you can't wear that coat, you got to wear another one. And that was probably, typically Philly is probably where that was happening, because you better not wear the opponents, you will die. That's how rough they are, right?
It's a Baltimore Orioles game.
Oh, okay, all right. I was thinking it was Philly because you were there, but okay. So, but the guy said you can't wear that jacket. You got to get one for our team. And I think what you had said is they went into the store and then put on the jacket that worked, and then they walked out, and instead of paying for it, like the hybrid just did some sort of hand movement, and then
he just waved to the cashier or whatever it was, and the cashier just smiled as he's walking out wearing this jacket. She's sitting at the cash register. I mean, she's at the counter and watching him walk out, not paying it, not thinking anything of it whatsoever.
Wow.
And that's fine. Everything is just fine.
Could you imagine living here and having, looking like a human, and then having the power to not pay for anything, do whatever you want, get wherever you want. I mean, there's no way we could stop them. There's no way. They know what we're about to do. Yeah, you can't pull out the gun and shoot them if you were afraid of them. They would just stop you.
It would never occur to you to reach under the pillow.
You're right. Well, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
You have to remember, in the first American abduction event that we ever heard about, the Barney and Betty Hill case, throughout the entire event, Barney had a gun in his pocket. When he saw the UFO and then they stopped on the road, he opened up the trunk and he got his gun out and he stuck it in his jacket pocket. And he walked towards the UFO that was hovering above some trees or something like that. And then he looked at, he could see gray aliens staring out at him as he looked at it with binoculars. He panicked. He ripped off the binoculars from his neck, as opposed to taking them off, and ran back to the car yelling, "They're going to get us! They're going to get us!" And that started the abduction phenomenon. That he and Betty then turned left onto a dirt road from the highway they were on. But he still had that gun in his pocket when he went on board that UFO. He never even thought of it. Never occurred to him.
So we're going through this stage of, we've learned so much from you about the hybridization project, and we've learned about how it happens, in families, and maybe your mom or dad or somebody in the family has been taken to, and probably your brothers and sisters will, and your kids will. So now, you get to this point of these hybrids, and they're here, and they're learning how to be humans. They want to know how to make a ham sandwich, or they want to know, and I think I remember a story of you saying that the abductee had said, okay, here's bread and here's meat, and this is how you do it, and you keep the meat in the refrigerator, don't let it go bad. And just to hear those things, and you think about it, when we're born, we're taught, okay, now you got to tie your shoe. People might think that's really silly, but until you've been taught something, you can't do it. This is how you button a button. You have to learn it. So they're coming down here to learn how to be human. Do we know why yet? Do we know the reason for that?
No, don't know why. Neither do I say the word, I use the word hybrids, and that's just my own word, and so other people don't have to say it, but to differentiate between the hybrids and all the other tons of hybrids with different shades of humanity in them, so to speak, that are on board who will probably not be living here. But the ones who are moving into apartments and places like that, I call them hybrids, and they're the ones who have been groomed to be here. They were created to be here, and they've had all these abductees teaching them everything. But when they get here, they realize there are 10 billion things that they haven't learned that you can't learn by living on a UFO all your life, no matter what.
Let's hope they stay out of politics too, please. Don't go there. So what about, let's see, so I got about a bazillion questions. I mean, golly, they're coming down here and doing this. First of all, the fact that they've kind of, it's almost like water has been added to the actual alien because of through the hybridization part of it, and from it going from looking like a weird looking alien hybrid thing to one that now looks like a human. Even though they have those psychic abilities, they're probably nowhere near the psychic abilities that the aliens have, because they lost a little bit being a human, didn't they, you think?
It's possible. I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't know what the gradation is.
True.
It could be that they made the apparatus that allows that in the brain to be just as fully intact as it is with all the other aliens.
True.
But I don't know. I don't know.
I know a lot of people have said that they see them right here at their face.
Well, that's
when
different.
They're being abducted.
That's a whole different situation. That situation where an alien is staring at a distance of maybe an inch, or even eyelashes touching, that sort of stuff, is being stared into their eyes. I first discovered that, I guess in Secret Life, I put it in for the first time, and that opened up the whole neurological world of this phenomenon. Just a dumb thing. A woman was saying that she was being stared at by this alien, and there are all these ideas going through her mind, and these emotions and this and that, and he was staring at her, and I couldn't figure out what the hell is he staring at her, and she was now feeling sort of feelings of love and emotion for him. What he's a bug-eyed monster looking at her. What? This doesn't make any sense. And I finally, literally, just asked the right question out of thin air. It wasn't planned. I said, "Well, how close is he to you?" And then she said, "Well, his eyes are about an inch away, or something. Or his eyes are touching mine, or whatever it was." It was like, what? I said, can you move your eyes? Can you go back and forth? No. Can you close your eyelids? No. And then I realized as I began to ask this question, what other people were saying who were intimating things like that this was an exceptionally important procedure. As I realized, it was using the optic nerve as a conduit, because the optic nerve is the only nerve ending you can see from the outside, the only nerve you can see from the outside. And they're using it as a conduit to go through the brain and go to any other areas in the brain that they want.
Wow.
And they are exceptionally good at this. And they can make people feel and think and do all sorts of things. And when they go through people's minds, I'll say, well, when he's going through your mind, what are you seeing? A pencil, a table. I'm seeing a cat now. I'm seeing. It's just, if you see these images going through their brain as they're going through certain areas of their mind, or else they'll feel things here. I'm feeling something in my shoulder, my arm, and
wow.
You can trace what they're doing with their eye. Now there's no connection really. They're maybe an inch away from the person,
wow.
But they are. This is advanced neurology. This is not human. This is beyond human ability at this point in our lifetimes. That's for sure. In a human lifetime, that is to say, humanity's lifetime.
Do you think government does know about this, or do you think it's totally opposite of that? And if the government does know about this, or somebody above the government, or black government, or all the different groups of people that people talk about, do you think they know about it, and do you think they might know that technology?
I can only hope that they do. I hope that they studied this. I hope that they've had thousands of scientists working on it, because they'd have to have that, and they'd have to be working on it for a very, very long time, because there's an enormous amount of levels that you have to go past to get to where the aliens are. And like my friend Alan Hynek said years ago, he said, and people wanted to know how UFOs flew, how did they get here? And he said it would be like showing Benjamin Franklin a color TV and asking him how it works. And Benjamin Franklin was a legitimate genius. I don't use that word very often, but he was a legitimate genius. And there's no way on this earth he could have ever figured out how a television set worked. There's too many levels of knowledge that that has not come down through humanity yet. And that's the same thing with these aliens. Carrie.
Is that a cat making that noise?
Yeah, she's sharpening her claws on the edge of a box, except that she doesn't have any claws.
Oh,
Carrie.
You mean, Daddy.
All right.
So, well, a lot of people think we're in cahoots with them, and
well, let me say about the government. If the government knows about it and they're dealing with it and they're learning from it, thank God for that. That would be wonderful. I'll take it. They want to keep it secret? Fine. That's great, as long as they're doing something about it. They'd have to have thousands of scientists working on it, because this is a direct threat to national security, period. Nothing has ever been as big a threat as this is. So they would have to have scientists from all over the country working on it 24/7. In a passion to get this thing done, to figure out what's going on, to protect ourselves. That is required.
What if they already know?
No, well, that's fine. They're still working on it. they can't just know about it. They have to try to stop it, because if they knew anything about it, they know that this is not good.
Oh, stop what? The hybridization part of it?
No.
Or that they're
whole alien
infiltrating?
thing. This is a threat to the national security. They're landing here. This is a violation of American airspace. The United States government is required to look at this if they believe that there is a threat to the national security, and it is a violation of American airspace.
What if they know, though, and they're just not saying anything, and they don't,
Fine.
and they hide behind that?
Fine, that's great. I'll take it as long as they're studying it.
Mm.
If they're not studying it and they're not letting us know, then I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm sure they would be. I would think. I would absolutely.
They have to be studying. No, they are required to. The amount of time and energy that the United States and every government in the world would be putting into this would be enormous.
Well,
Biggest thing ever,
absolutely.
ever.
What about, that the government knows about it, and what a lot of people say is that they've traded off, they've made treaties and said, hey, okay, you give us this information and we'll give you this, which is people to abduct.
Right.
So I'm sure you've heard about that. Have you gotten any inclination of any of that through the hypnosis in any of the sessions or anything like that? Have you ever...
In the movie Treasure of Sierra Madre, 1948, starring Humphrey Bogart.
Before my time, ha!
A bunch of banditos came upon him holding a bag of gold. Actually, he didn't know it was fool's gold, but he thought it was gold, and so did the banditos. And they said, with a Spanish accent, give us. We're sheriffs. We're sheriffs and sheriff. I'm a sheriff, and these are the sheriff deputies. And Humphrey Bogart looked at him and said, "Oh yeah? Well, where's your badges?"
You don't wear no stinking badges.
We don't need no stinking badges, right? It's the same way with the aliens. They don't need no stinking back and forth where you give us. They can do whatever they want. Period. They don't have to join together and ask and then sign a treaty. It's ridiculous. It's nonsensical.
This is true. They can use that mind to do whatever. I agree with you. And when people say, well, one day the government's going to tell us, I don't think it's up to them. I think it's up to the aliens themselves to tell us if they want to. If you're just now joining us, I want to thank you for being a part of Blue Rock Talk, Earth's Most Interesting Conversations. I'm talking with Dr. David JACOBS, and he's telling us about his research into aliens, the abduction phenomena, and also hybrids. We're going to get deeper into the hybrids next. Stay with us. We'll be right back as soon as I can play with this. Oh, I got to tell you about something. Take a look at this, and we'll be right back. Hey there, welcome back to Blue Rock Talk, Earth's Most Interesting Conversations. I'm Connie Willis. This is our premiere show and live launch. Thank you very much for watching tonight. We have Dr. David JACOBS with us. From time to time, I can look over and see some of the questions you guys have, and I'm getting them from my emails, which I have about 20 emails, and I'm getting them from all of them. I'm getting texts on my personal texts. I'm getting them on YouTube as well, and even Facebook Live that I have. It's absolutely very difficult to look at that when you're doing an interview show, so please understand that maybe I can get to those maybe later. And you can also, down below in this descriptions, you can, especially when this comes back out, or you can see it archived, you can also ask questions there, and I'll see if I can't get David to look at it at one point and maybe answer some of those questions if he has time. We'll see if he'll do that for us too. So let's bring back Dr. David JACOBS and continue talking about aliens, the abductions, hybrids, and hubrids. And David, if you don't mind, would you ever take a look at some of the questions down below at one point, just answer them from the YouTube channel? Is that something, you probably answer a lot, but is that something you would do at one point on my YouTube channel here at Blue Rock?
Oh, yours? Oh, sure. If you look and oh, sure, I'll answer whatever questions from whoever, wherever. Okay,
great. So those of you out there watching, you got a question, you want to say something to him, you know, because it's hard for me to look at that now and do the interview. So please understand that. But we can get to it later if you want to go ahead and do that. And afterwards, David just said that he would take a look at that and answer some of those. I appreciate that you do that, because when those questions come across, it's easier if you can go and look at them and answer them instead of me going, okay, let me email them to David. Because I do that. When I'm on Coast, I do the same thing. A lot of people will ask me questions, and you know, there are things that I can't answer. So I send them off to whoever I've interviewed, and sometimes it just gets lost, you know, passing around, and then sometimes people will get the answer, and it's 2 weeks later, and they don't even care that they asked it. So let's get back to you. The different books that you have, I have them down below also, links so people can find them. Your first one was UFO.
The UFO controversy in America.
Okay, then the next one, Secret Lives.
Secret Life, yeah.
Secret Life.
And the Threat.
The Threat.
And then I edited a book. I called 10 people together to write articles, chapters for me. And I have an introduction, a chapter, and a sort of a bibliographic essay in that as well, called UFO'S and Abductions Challenging the Borders of Knowledge. That's published by an academic press, the University Press of Kansas. And then came, well, actually, that was, let's see, The Threat and UFO'S, and then Walking Among Us. It took me 14 years to come out with Walking Among Us.
I know, I was waiting forever for that. I just remember saying, come on, bring it on. So with the research for this, and by the way, the difference is these hybrids that you spoke about, they were coming into people's apartments, into their homes or wherever, and they were kind of just staying kind of quiet, right, and not seen. Then all of a sudden they started going to the sporting events. And I think you even mentioned at one point one of the abductees came into the house, or contactees or experiencers came into the house, and the hybrid went shopping and took care of the apartment with pillows and pillowcases and said, what do I do with this? Is that correct? It's amazing.
Yes, well, she was brought in to take a look at, there were three young hybrids, as I call them, who were moving in. Hybrids. And they wanted her to see their apartment, which was actually an apartment in a complex that there were other alien apartments there too. And so she had to go through each room and inspect it to make sure it looked okay. So nothing was odd. Everything had to be absolutely normal. And she noticed that the pillows were on the bed, but they didn't have pillowcases. So she said, "Where are the pillowcases?" And at first they didn't know what she was talking about. And then one went into a drawer and brought out these pillowcases. Are these them? Is this what you mean? Yes, you have to put the pillows in those pillowcases. And then she showed them how to do it and all that. And then they were happy because it looked normal now, see?
Oh, right.
And I mean, but it's so odd. There, as I said, there's so many things that they can learn on board a UFO, but it's when you're a baby, you absorb all sorts of information about how to use a spoon, for example, you know. And,
I prefer them coming down here and asking about it because it's better than them learning it on TV. That would be a disaster. True. So they're smart enough not to do that.
There is a segment where a group of hybrids would be, but young, very young, come into this woman's house. And in fact, this is happening, I think, to a lot of abductees now. The young hybrids or hybrids are coming down and learning as much as they can in somebody's house. But you can only learn so much looking through somebody's house. You can't go to anyway. No, I forgot what I was saying. But she taught them. She taught them what a television was, and their questions were things like, who gets to use the television? How long can you watch television? And she showed them channels, and then she showed them different shows. Who gets to watch which shows? Who watches what shows, or what? In other words, they were looking for the rules of watching television. That is, you could tell they're on board a UFO, everything is absolutely rule directed. There's no room whatsoever for independence. And so this had to be with the same thing with television. Who gets to watch it? How long do they watch it? How many channels can they watch? On and on and on and on. These are the kind of questions they asked. They were concerned. They were interested in that. She would go through the channels, and there was a sitcom, and people would talk, and there would be laughter. And they said that they could hear people laughing, but why don't they see the people? How are they? Well, they're either in the audience or it's a laugh track.
It's canned, yeah, right.
And so, and they're sitting watching, and that sort of stuff. But they never heard of such a thing as an audience or a sitcom or anything like that. They have almost no concept of what a sense of humor is.
Are they able to eat, go to the bathroom? Do they do that?
Yes. No, they are human in every way.
Except
for the... In fact, the closest that I ever came to having something of earth-shaking importance was many, many years ago. I can tell you when. It was in 1991. Bud Hopkins and I, or maybe 91 or 92, Bud Hopkins and I were going around the country sometimes with John Mack a little bit later, and sometimes just the two of us, and to tell people about what the abduction phenomenon was. And we went to different cities and all that. It was a planned tour and sponsored by a person who gave us money to do that. And we were in Ann Arbor, and we're about to give a talk at it might have been a room at the University of Michigan. I can't remember exactly where. But we had an abductee who lived nearby there, and she came and she stayed in the hotel that we were staying in. A hybrid, not a hybrid, but a hybrid, an adult hybrid, one who's not living here, came down.
And a hybrid, as you put it, is a human and an alien. Hybrid
living here. They're living here.
Oh, hybrids
can't be human, but there's some ingredients missing, so they're not living here. See. Okay. So, but he came down. This was an abduction event, and he had to go to the bathroom. And he went to the bathroom and he urinated, and he missed the toilet. So when she got up in the morning, having not remembered anything about what had happened the night before, she saw that there was urine on the back of the toilet, behind the toilet.
That was a human element of this hybrid.
Right.
It's like every man.
This hybrid. And so I told her to soak as much of it up and put it in a Kleenex and put it in a jar for me.
Absolutely.
And I did that, and then I gave the jar to a friend of mine who worked at the University of Michigan to study. He then gave it to some sort of medical group or something like that, and they said to them, they gave him a report saying, what we found was urine. And he said, well, okay, but were there any differences in this urine? What, Well, they didn't know that. They didn't know that that's what they were supposed to do. In the meantime, a janitor cleaned up the napkin, the tissue, and threw it away.
Everything gets blown off when.
No, this is just a dumb mistake.
You think it was just a mistake? You don't think something was going?
This was early on, really,
Wow.
and I mean '92, or it was not. It was a long time ago, and but that was as close as I ever got.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Well, I know that you've noticed that, at one point they were just coming down to the people's homes and learning how to, make a sandwich and make beds and do this and do that. And then all of a sudden they start walking around in front of people. I mean, that takes a lot of courage. They have totally advanced to be able to do that, to go to a sporting game and go shopping and things like that. So what are you hearing?
It's not just that he went to the guy who I was working with was a huge Baltimore Orioles fan, and he had season tickets. Now, a season ticket doesn't mean you go every game. It means you have certain weekends for the season that you can go, or certain days that you can go if you want, and might have a block of 10 games or 20 games or whatever. And so he came to me, and he said, and he usually went with his daughter every time and so they had 2 seats there, and he'd bring his daughter. And I said, and he said, well, I went down to the game, but I went alone this time. I said, you went alone? Oh, that's interesting. We were just about to have a session behind in my little session room there. And he said, yeah, I went alone. I said, well, what did you do with your ticket? Did you sell your ticket? Because they're actually worth considerable amount of money. And you stand out there in front of the stadium, say, ticket here, ticket, anybody want a ticket? And he couldn't remember what he did with the ticket. Now, this is just 2 weeks later. He couldn't remember what he did with the ticket. I said, well, when you sat in your seat, did anybody sit next to you? Because if they got your ticket, they'd be sitting in that seat next to you, You couldn't remember if anybody was sitting next to him. So we did a session on this. So he knew he was going to go to the game alone this time. And instead of driving directly to the game, he went off on a side road somewhere on the way down to the game. And there was his hubrid friend who was waiting for him. And the guy got in the car, and this is when he was wearing this jacket. And that's when my guy said, well, you can't wear that jacket, And they went and they found a parking space, and I think they got something to eat too, as I remember, or whatever. And then they went into this store, and he walked out with the other jacket or whatever it was. But that was the interesting thing was when they walked out, there were like 1,000 people who were walking out at once in front of him, and the hubrid complained that, or whatever, that there was, it was a lot, it was really crowded. So, as I think that this happened, I can't remember whether they put it in or not. He made people with his mind just sort of wander off to the side each side so they could get through real quickly, and nobody knew the difference. But as you see, what this is, there's another part to this which is important to understand, and the part is that it's global, it's intergenerational, and it's clandestine. It's secret. They don't want us to know what they're doing. That's an irrefutable concept of being clandestine, of being secret. They do not want us to know what they're doing. It's obviously irrefutable, because if they did want us to know what they were doing, they wouldn't be clandestine. And when you have those 3 things together, global, intergenerational, clandestine, I just can't find good things with that. You know what I mean? I've thought about how good it could be, and if every which way but up, and maybe I should have looked up, I don't know, but the fact is that it's not good. This does not wear well with me. I just can't see goodness coming out of this.
What do you think, though? I mean, because so far, I mean, they are taking people against their wills, but, and I guess some people say they can take them, so, but what, well, whether they have a choice or not, I guess maybe
Right,
people
whether
are
they have a
open
choice
to
or
it,
not.
right?
And you have to remember they're taken hundreds of times.
Right. But what do you see? Do you see anything after, being able to talk to the abductees and going through it? Have you tried in any way to venture to find out why? Any clue whatsoever? Because I remember you talking about a story where one of the people that was taken was looking at some sort of like monitor on the wall, and I guess that the telepathy going back and forth was, "What do you see here?" And it was humans at a picnic table, right, in a park. I found that really interesting.
Right.
Can you tell that story? I really thought that was telling.
Yeah, they took a young woman, and she sees this image on the wall. Basically, it's almost like a television screen, only it's different, obviously, and it's just a normal picnic. It's just a picnic of just people, having a picnic in a park.
Just a video,
right? They're playing a ball, and there's a barbecue or whatever it is. It's just normal stuff. And she hears in her mind's ear, "Can you tell the difference between you and us? Between humans and us, essentially." And she's a little bit puzzled by it because she looks at it and everybody is just normal. She says, "Well, no, what do you mean? Everything? No, I can't. There's no difference at all." And they say, "See, isn't that wonderful? Soon we will all be together. Soon everybody will know his place. Soon it's going to be wonderful." And
interesting.
And I've heard several stories like that. And when they say everything's going to be wonderful, that means for them. I don't think that means for us. There's an oddity here, and it's so odd it's hard for me to even imagine it. And I've mentioned this before, but I should mention it more because it comes up over and over again in the oddest ways. In the future, let me start over again. When I first started doing research, people would say, "Well, I have the sense that sometime in the future, or that I'm programmed to do something. I'm going to be doing something sometime in the future. Something's going to happen. I'm going to be doing something. I don't know what it is, but." And I thought to myself, this was early on in the late '80s and early '90s. Well, what they're thinking of is the fact that they're being abducted, and they're going to be abducted in the future too. That was my sense of it. But but then I realized years later that a lot of abductees were being trained to do alien work. And one of the things that is by far the most common thing that people tell me is odd, so off the wall. Who would even ever think of something like this? They'll be standing on a corner. There'll be a group of panicked humans running down the street. Their job is to stand on the corner and say, "Everything is going to be okay, everything is going to be fine, just keep going this way, everything is going to be fine."
Whoa.
That is their job. One person told me that they were all headed towards a large UFO that was landed and waiting for them to come in. I have heard this without ever discussing it. Well, maybe I did discuss it on radio once or twice, but I've heard this from people who had no idea who I was, basically, and tell me that that's what they're going to be doing in the future, and of all the things to think of,
wow.
what job you're going to have in the future. I'll be flying, I'm going to be steering, I'm going to be, announcing to the public, whatever. Doing this kind of work of standing on the corner and telling people to keep moving, everything is going to be okay. And that is number one. That's the number one thing I hear.
Wow, that's interesting. Lynn Buchanan, remote viewer, psychic spy. I don't know if you know Lynn or not, but that's interesting that you say that, because he said that once before, that, and he said this, to different classes along the way. So I know that it's not a secret for him to say this, for me to repeat it. But he said something like that he was taken in some way, and they were checking out his hand to see the size of his hand, to see if he was able to fly the ships if his hands could touch, like piano, it's good to have like long fingers. They were checking out the size of his hands and fingers to see if he could work the controls on the ship. I remember him telling me that, and hear you say something very similar to that. That's crazy. So
yeah.
when
this is not even on a ship. This is just standing on a side on a street.
Right.
And it's
training them for that.
Learning how to fly a UFO is not uncommon, and I've had that as well.
Wow, that's what he said.
It doesn't have anything to do with fingers.
Well, he said it was something to do with, I don't know. It didn't even seem like you touched anything.
That may be true.
Yeah, he said something like that. But he needed something was important about the size of his hand. And we can make a bunch of jokes about that, but we would digress. So, hybrids. I remember something else too at one point where you felt like you were talking and communicating with a hybrid, and that maybe you were going to get a picture of one. Did you ever tell us about the communication? And did you ever get a picture of one? Have you ever seen one? Have you ever met one?
This will be the last book I write if I can ever finish this book I'm doing now on how to do hypnosis with abductees.
Oh, just put that one aside and finish the other one.
So I often say I'm averaging a word a week.
Oh, gee.
Writing in this book. But the next one will be about how I became perhaps the only person on Earth who had a conversation with a hybrid and was not under his control. And that was because we did it through AOL instant messaging, of all things. Therefore, I can never absolutely prove that I was not hoaxed by a woman who is a good friend of mine and who I still talk with frequently, and I've known since for 20 years almost.
So you don't believe you were hoaxed?
Oh no. But I cannot prove it.
Right.
But once I write this book and you understand the dynamics and what led up to it, on and on and on and on, you'll see that there's a logic that goes all the way through it. So what they were trying to do was trying to get her to stop talking with me, and she refused. And she kept talking with me, and they found out all sorts of ways that she was still communicating with me, and they tried to stop her with that. And with AOL Instant Messaging, you're typing relatively rapidly, and then the person answers. And if there's a time that passes between what you just typed and you're waiting for the answer, then you think, well, maybe there's been some sort of disconnect electronically. The person should be typing back the answer. And what he had her do was I came into her room where she was talking with me, and he then said he ordered her to say something. He ordered her to say to send me a message saying that something to the point of that everything she has told me for all these years was not true, and she's sorry. Now goodbye. Something like that. I mean, there was like two sentences.
That's lame.
Everything I said is not true. You're not to believe me. Goodbye. I have to look at the exact
They
words.
really are like toddlers themselves when it comes to being human, right? They're obviously geniuses in other areas, but when it comes
This is not a hybrid. This is a security hybrid. This is a special hybrid who is built to make sure that the hybrids are safe and that the abductee is in compliance. That's all they do. That is all they think about. That is what their brains were made for, and that is all.
Wow.
So when she sent me that note, I knew the hairs on my head stood up. I thought, oh my God, this is not the woman I have known for years. This doesn't sound like her. Not only that, she called me David instead of Dave. She'd never in her life called me David. And so, but this guy knew my name. So the next night he came in, and she was sitting at the chair, and he ordered her to say something, to type something, and she refused. And it took all of her strength, but she refused. And he knew that if time passed, I would think something was wrong and that we've disconnected or whatever. So he said, "Sit over there." and he forced her to sit on a chair behind him, and he sat in her chair, and he typed out this message to me that was sort of astonishing, and it was well. I'm getting the two things mixed up. He typed out that message, I guess, and then he typed out. Then we started talking a little bit. Maybe the next message. Next time I talked to him, he typed out, and I began to have this this back and forth with him. He was only interested in certain things, like, who is with you now? I would say, no one. I had a friend with me actually during one of these instances. Who was we told about this? Nobody.
I'm writing a book.
Right. In a society that is based on what's the word I'm looking for? As the older I get and the tireder I get, the less I can remember words. In a telepathic society, you can't lie. Lying is not a big deal in a telepathic society. Everybody knows everything the person's thinking, period.
That's very true.
So, but when you're typing, you still think the person is, as I realized, you still think that he was thinking that I'm telling him exactly the truth. He can't understand that I'm not telling him the truth. It doesn't happen. So he's okaying everything I'm saying, basically, you know. And I wound up getting into these conversations, basically, in large part about, I would say, well, I'm a UFO investigator. And he would say, well, how many people are there UFO investigators? And we've been told that, and all this business about UFO investigators and things like that. It was astonishing because I could control the conversation to the degree that abductees can't. Because I was 100 miles away from them.
So distance doesn't matter in this case, is what you're saying with these?
Well, their distance for controlling people, there's a limit. They can't control people who are 100 miles away. They can control people who are 100 feet away. But there's a limit to what their brain can reach, you know. So, then they decided that they couldn't stop her. Maybe they should just try to find me and stop me. And then they tried to get her to come down and visit me, and she knew that she could. She and I knew that once this started, which it started actually before this event, that she would never come here again. I never saw her again until just last year in California, where I saw her. But once she realized that they were going to be with her or follow her and take her, and she would go to my house, then they would try to shut me up in my house, and that was one of the more frightening situations of my life, and it frightened me and Irene and my son Alex, who was living at home at the time, and it was very scary. It was a very interesting book. I wound up having conversations with a hybrid, Jamie, in the book, in Walking Things.
Just before Jamie, so this security one that you're talking about, it sounds like he could have just shut her up. I mean, why wasn't he able to control her when they can control you to do all sorts of things? Why wasn't he unable to control her?
She can't be controlled when he's not there.
Oh, it's only when they're around. Oh, okay.
In close proximity, right, yeah.
I gotcha. And so, well, I wonder what he was going to do to you. Any plan any idea what he might have done to you?
Put an idea in my head that I should never, ever talk with her again as long as I lived. Period. That's the only thing they wanted.
But you think they could plant that in your head and then go away and it would still stay in your head?
Don't know.
Okay.
This is uncharted territory.
Right.
And but I didn't want to be the guinea pig. What's that?
And you didn't want to become a subject of it.
Right. I didn't want to be the guinea pig who led the pack.
Right.
I wound up. There actually is an arc to the story. There's a lot of things that happened, and it's actually an exciting story. But the two stars of the book, Walking Among Us, are Betsy and Jamie, the hybrid. I wound up talking with Jamie I had 8 conversations with him, some as long as 4 hours long, usually starting about 1 o'clock in the morning, which wrecked my next day.
It sounds like when we want to talk to you on Coast to Coast.
Right, exactly.
And you're like, no, it'll wreck my day.
That's what happens. But this was
It does.
unusual conversations, to say the least, and interesting, and amazing, and jaw-dropping, and all the rest of those things.
And how were you talking to him? Through computer again?
Email and AOL instant messaging.
So they know how to type. They know how to spell.
Knew how to type. Yep. Knew to type the letters. I don't know whether he was doing with both fingers.
Because it could be voice too, right? It could be voice. Voice text.
She did not have a voice mechanism for her.
Okay.
For her machine, so to speak.
That's amazing.
So anyway, Jamie turned out to be very much like he is in the book. Very, very nice, very polite. But definitely not human.
And what are the signs that we would be able to know if we've come across one?
You would not know.
There's got to be something.
If they even think that you're eyeing them in the wrong way, you will immediately think, oh, this person is a wonderful person. I really like this person. I guess I'll go away now.
Well, I think somebody said it, and I think you may have backed it up. I'm not sure, but there's certain things they just don't know. It's like space and distance. They could talk really loudly to you when you're right there, as opposed to if you're far away across the street, they'll still talk like this, not thinking they need to raise their voice to you.
Did I say that somewhere? I don't remember that.
Maybe you didn't, but somebody did. They said that they thought they had run into a hybrid, and one of the things that they noticed about them is that they didn't know the difference between time and space. They'd be almost like New Yorkers. If you live anywhere outside of New York, you kind of understand there's a lot of space around you. But you go into New York, and New Yorkers are used to people can be very close to them, and they don't really notice the proximity. But if you're across the street, I'm going to go, hey, I'm going to raise my voice. Hey, David, hey, come over here. But and if you're close up, I know that I don't have to talk so loud.
Yeah,
and they were saying that this person or hybrid, they believed it was a hybrid, would be across the street and go, "Hey, come on over here," not realizing, I got to raise my voice for you to hear me before you can come over here. Ring a bell with you?
Possible. Anything is possible, and I'm not saying yes or no about that because I don't know about that particular situation. However.
I think it was a Roger K. Lear. It was Dr. Lear.
Yeah,
That's who it was.
Yeah. Roger was a good friend of mine
Great
for
guy.
years and years.
Great guy.
But the thing is that.
Well, did you see him? Did you get to meet him? Did you see him? Did you? What?
No. I didn't want to be anywhere near him because I know I'd be under his control.
Oh.
So, but I. People have called me up and written to me about hybrid. They think that their boyfriend is a hybrid. They think they're a hybrid. They think that they found a hybrid, this and that. And the answer to that, I can't say 100% of the time, but let's just say 99% of the time, is that they're not hybrids. Because they're perfectly average in every way. And they can control people neurologically. So if you think that something is odd, you will immediately think something isn't odd. I was mistaken, I guess. And so it's almost impossible to I mean, these aliens on board, and the leaders of the aliens, I think, are the insect-like ones. They're the ones who give the orders. Everybody else takes orders. They are the only ones, I think, who actually know what is happening here. All the rest don't have needs to know. The gray aliens, what do they need to know? They are bred to do certain tasks and jobs. That's what they do. That's what. The same thing with hybrids. For most hybrids.
Heard they were the taxi cabs of the universe.
Right.
Right.
Well, whatever it is, they do it well. I'll tell you that.
What about the praying mantis ones? They look like a praying mantis.
Yeah, those are the insect-like. I call them insectolins in Walking Among Us, and they're the ones who are in control. They're the insect-like ones, and we know nothing about them whatsoever, except they give orders. Everybody else takes orders, as far as I can tell. They don't abduct people. I don't have any cases of insect-like ones abducting people. They look relatively fragile, very, very, very thin and elongated. My guess is when they first came here, in I think the latter part of the 19th century or the early part of the 20th century, and they looked around at this planet and they said, we'll take this planet, this one will do, we'll have this one. In order to kick off the process of abducting people, they had to bring with them a workforce to go down and abduct people, because they don't do it.
Yeah, the Greys do that for them, right?
No.
No?
The reptilian-like ones. People say, oh, these look like reptiles, like alligators or snakes or whatever, that sort of stuff. This was the workforce that came with them, my guess is, and I talked about this in Walking Among Us. They had to bring somebody with them. There wasn't anybody to abduct yet, so there weren't any abductees. They had to go down and start the ball rolling. These are the ones they used, and they still have them. And the reptilians do pretty much the same work as the gray aliens do. Not a whole lot different now. They don't come down and get people. The gray aliens come down and get people because the gray aliens themselves are hybrids made with DNA from humans. As I've said many times, I looked at those hybrids, everything looks weird, until I began to look longer and longer and longer. No hair, that's weird. Big eyes, no whites, that's weird. A big head, bulbous head, that's weird. Pointed chin, that's weird. Ear holes, yeah, that's not so weird, because they got to have ears so that if something falls, they got to look over and see what it was. Okay, ears, yeah. A nose, well, okay, if something spills, they got to be able to sense okay. It was the slit for the mouth that made me think, no. They don't breathe, they don't eat, they don't speak, they don't have tongues, they don't have any apparatus, there's no teeth, they don't have any apparatus whatsoever. Why do they have that slit for a mouth? And my sense is, now that I'm guessing this,
right,
human DNA was put in. And that's why there's a slit for a mouth, and they were created on board with the human DNA to have 2 arms and 2 legs and all the rest of that stuff, and not look like monsters, and have a body that we can recognize, and do the work on humans, and they're the ones who are going to come down and get people with hybrids now, and sometimes just hybrids.
Wow. Do you believe that sometimes abductees or people that are taken, I hate that word too, you're right, that sometimes they stay on the ship and never come back, and maybe it's their choice or not? Do you think that ever happens?
No,
when
don't
there's
think
missing
that ever
people?
happens.
You don't think so?
No, I would never know.
Well, this is true.
Nobody would ever know.
Do you think that there's different aliens that are coming down and taking different people for different reasons? Or do you
Never
think this
heard
is
it. I've heard people.
You wouldn't know because you haven't researched it. Like, you're really good at, this is what I know from my research, so I don't.
Well, that's all I can say.
Yeah.
I've had people who described all sorts of different aliens to me, and then when we do hypnosis or relaxation techniques is what I do. They don't describe all sorts of different people. They describe the same people everybody else is describing. Not that I care one way or the other. If there's different ones who are on board, I want to know about it, but no, they were, this is confabulation.
Mm-hmm.
Confabulation is inventing things that you think are true. You're not trying to deceive anybody, but you're inventing a narrative that turns out to be in parts true, but in the most part not true. And confabulation is at its greatest, at its highest, at its most, with consciously remembered events. when people consciously say, I remember everything consciously, why, there was a guy who had an arm grown out of his forehead, I saw him. You can't. No. Consciously remembered events which are not supposed to be remembered is where the highest amount of confabulation is. Everybody thinks it's the exact opposite. Well, if they're remembering unconsciously, then that's exactly what happened. No. I learned the hard way. That's exactly what didn't happen.
Well, when they, you're like a project. You were their project, and as after the hybridization project, and then after, or that part of it, and then after they learn how to be human from you, when do they kind of finally let you go? Do they say, oh, well, you're 80 now, or, do they ever let you go, or do they continue learning forever?
Yeah. The answer is we don't really know that, because we do see elderly people on board a UFO, but we know that it's got to stop sometime when they just can't function anymore, So I'm going to just say probably late 70s or early 80s they stop, maybe even earlier 70s. But people do see elderly people. Now, if I work with a younger person, somebody who's old, is 50.
Well, that's true.
You have to be careful how you ask questions,
Yeah,
and but we
so
know
wrong.
that at some point they stop abducting people, but it is a lifelong thing until they can't be used anymore. Obviously, it's not lifelong for everybody, because if people develop, if they have a spinal fracture and they can't walk and they're in a wheelchair, they're not taken anymore.
Well, do the aliens themselves? I mean, why not heal these people? If that's their project, why not heal them?
That would be revealing themselves. That does not happen. Minor healings do, but a major healing, like I can walk, that's not going to happen. That blows their cover, basically. It's a miracle.
Did you say at one point they were doing it, though? At one point they were healing, and then they stopped?
Most of the healings I've found happen to children or to people with upper respiratory illnesses, flu, cold, things like that.
Oh.
They would heal those, and I think it was related to the air they breathed on board, because I've never heard of a sick hybrid. And you got to figure that people who they're bringing up are sick, all the time. It happens throughout the course of their lives. They're dealing with millions of people. There's got to be germs. So my guess is it's the air that's being breathed on board that automatically kills all the germs or whatever. And people will come back without the flu or without a cold, as they had. I had one woman who had now I can't remember what the condition is called, when you have a growth of veins in the back in your eye, and it will lead to blindness. And
Is that glaucoma?
Not glaucoma, I don't think. Maybe it is. Can't remember. Anyway, and she had retinopathy. Anyway. She had to have her retinas, these veins would grow in her eyes and it would be blinding, and she'd have to go to a doctor who would take them away, and with a light source or with whatever they had to burn them away. And that they did for her every once in a while, because it was getting in the way of their staring procedures. Close-up staring, it was interfering with the optic nerve. So they cleaned that up a little bit, but she would still have it afterwards. I mean, it was gone. She didn't have to go to the doctor and have it done.
That's nice.
But cancer?
No.
That's tough. Just tough. Killed in an automobile accident? That's tough. So now, with cancer, minor cancer things. A little bit, they can see a growth of cancerous tissue in the throat. They might clean that up before the person even knows about it. It's possible.
Right.
But miraculous cures, no.
I just lost my question. Something about Roger Lear when he was doing the researching in Verhanga, when the different little creatures were there. I can't remember my question. It was a good one. It was something about they would download information. They could, look in your eyes and just download information. I mean, do you hear that ever from people?
Yes.
And what are they getting? What's the information they're getting? One of the things is that, this is what it was. One of the things was when the information was downloaded in one of these people, one of the doctors, if I remember correctly. And later on, the doctor kind of told some of that. And then the next time Roger Lear went there, they said they didn't want to say anything again. But apparently, when he was talking, one of the downloads was saying some of the information had said, "Hey, you live on. You're just in a vehicle. Your soul is just in a vehicle. This is a vehicle." So I guess my question was, from that is, do you think that we're always, people are always taken up body-wise, or do you think sometimes their soul only is taken up?
No.
No? Okay.
So
that's from your research that you know.
They do not know the concept of soul. That is a human construct. They don't know anything about that. Don't know anything about religion.
That's what this other weird, different alien that's totally different looking than any of the ones even you've described had said. That was one of the things that it had downloaded in the guy's head.
This is consciously remembered. When you're remembering things consciously, that's when confabulation is at its highest. So you've got to be extremely careful.
Well, you had said that what some of these people were seeing, that one day they're going to be in a corner saying, this way, and everything's going to be okay. And there's a big UFO in the sky, and there's like panic, right, kind of thing.
UFO on the ground.
Oh, UFO on the ground. Okay, like a mothership one, right? Kind of size.
It looked like a large object collecting humans as they ran down the street towards it. Is what it looked like. I don't know. I don't want to say that.
Well, the people taken, are they like special in a way to where they're kind of protected in life at all? And whatever may happen in the future?
They're not protected at all, and they die of everything that's normal in terms of death. They get sick, they get horrible diseases, and they blow their brains out and this and that, and they're not protected at all. On board a UFO, every once in a while, there will be an emergency on a table. My guess is a heart attack or something like that. And the aliens rush over the table from the table that they were working on with the person I'm talking to who's watching this, at the side of her eyes or whatever. And they all rush over there and they're doing something. And then they walk back to everything is fine now, everything is okay. And they fixed that person. But he had his heart attack or whatever was on board. That's a whole different story. Because otherwise they'd have to drop him off dead. And they don't want to do that.
Oh, right. Wow, that's interesting.
And so,
one of your. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Did you have?
Well, the point is that this is what you're looking at here. Primarily, is an assembly line. This is 24/7, every single day of the year around the world. The amount of power. Alien power, I should say, that's put into this phenomenon is phenomenal, if I may use that word twice. It's mind-boggling. It's almost impossible to conceive of the number of beings, of aliens, of UFOs that has to be there somewhere in our atmosphere without us being able to see it. At all times. Now, once again, you're looking at extremely advanced technology here, but it has to be that way in order to take over a planet. And I do think that this is planetary acquisition, and I do think that they're here ultimately to take over. They're not here to help us. They're
not here to blend in. They're actually here to take over. Is what you think?
They're blending in first, and I don't know the steps that will be taken to ultimately acquire the planet, but this is a global phenomenon. You got to remember that, these three things. It's global, it's clandestine, and it's intergenerational. So with intergenerationality, it keeps up with the expanding population, and almost certainly will overtake it eventually, because more people in the world have more than 2 kids, which doesn't expand the population. Mother and father have 2 kids, and they have 2 kids, and so it's all just. But eventually, though, most people around the world have more than 2 kids, so the population has been expanding enormously. This keeps up with the population, but it also requires an enormous amount of work. They're not doing that because they're thinking about people's souls. They got their own agenda, and they are fulfilling it. And they've been doing it for a long, long time. I mean, at least back to the last quarter of the 19th century, and not before that.
And why do you think it's going to be bad?
Because they can control us, and we can't control them, and that makes us a second-class species, and them a first-class species. And I don't like that. I want to be a first-class species, and I want them to be second-class species. I look at the future, and I never imagined in my life I would be saying the things that I'm saying now. Never, ever. I was so thrilled when I did that very first session with Melissa. I had no idea what was going on in this phenomenon. Everything that was new to me, even though I was sitting next to Bud Hopkins and all this time, it was still amazing. We learned so little. We had so little knowledge. But now, many years, decades later, I've learned enough about this phenomenon to fear it. It has forced it on me. I really don't like this. I tell people all I want to do is sit around and watch television. Everybody laughs. I'm being serious.
You are. Well, I mean, the thing is that it continues on. It hasn't stopped. It didn't just, it's gone away, or they just stop at this point. You're seeing it continuously evolve and evolve and evolve.
I have seen it evolve,
and it's
yes.
not stopping, Yeah.
And this is called change over time, and as a historian, that of course was something that I was very accustomed to, because that's what historians look at in the long role. And that's change over time, and that's what we see with this phenomenon. Not that abductees know it. Most of them just only know what's happening to them. They don't know the big picture of what I'm hearing from other people too.
That's true. And black, white, Asian, French, Spanish,
yeah.
Whatever, right?
Yep.
Doesn't matter. What about
the Canadians?
What?
Even the Canadians.
Even the Canadians. What is this thing about Canadians and you? I think that's funny.
Actually, there's some wonderful UFO researchers in Canada, Don Dondery and Luigi Bentatelli, and there's
I love my Canadian friends. Yeah,
there's a lot of really good people who are doing a lot of good work there. No, this is everywhere. It's all through Latin America.
Do you notice? Do they ever talk about love? Relationships, these hybrids, does it look like they may get into a relationship with a human or anything like that?
It all depends on what you mean by relationship. They can have a male hybrid can have anything they want to have from any female human, period.
Well, this is true. You're right. Or from a male one. I have tons of accounts of this. I wrote about this in The Threat. The sexual encounters between hybrids and humans. Humans can't do anything about it. That's true. But what about love?
I have no idea if they think that they can love anything or anybody. I don't know. I do not know that. You got to remember, when they settle in, they are already late adolescence to early 20s. So their formative years have already been formed, in a way. But I don't know. I do not know. I haven't seen that yet, but they are human. So it's possible, I suppose, but I don't know.
Well, what is the next book going to be about? Where did you stop in walking among us, and where is it going to lead to next?
Well, it isn't. It's as I said before. It's the one I'm writing right now, which is how to do hypnosis with abductees, and then the next one about my own sort of adventures through the computer with hybrids. But I think I've gone as far as I can go. I've been involved with the UFO and abduction phenomenon for more than half a century, and
is it as far as you can go, or is it that you want to watch TV now? You're tired.
I am tired. My wife passed away a couple of years ago, and since that time, I've been for the first time in my adult life, I've been living alone because we got married when I was 21 and she was 19, and so
she was your best friend. You all were a great couple.
Yep. And 51 years, is a long time. So, and I've got other things to do. I'm sort of distancing myself from it a little bit, even though I've spent, as I said, my entire adult life looking at this subject.
How can you stop, though? It's getting closer and closer to possibly this thing landing and people running to the ship and,
Every once in a while, as I said before, I'll just say, it'll come to me, I'll say, oh my God, this is awful. And I think about my two sons, and I think to myself, God, they're not going to lead the life that they think they're going to lead, And now, I may be wrong about that, and when they have planetary acquisition in hand, when they decide that it's time to come here, maybe 50 years from now. Mm-hmm. Who knows?
Do you think? What do you think? What's your thought?
Well, I've seen too much development just in the past 20 years, or 30 years, or whatever it is, that it's developing rapidly. And it can't be another 50 years. They're already in the process of training abductees what to do with other abductees as they, widen out the workforce and get everything ready. And I just don't like it. I used to think it was amazing and astounding and everything and unbelievably wonderful and all that sort of stuff. And now I just think, no, I hate this subject. I really don't want it, and I don't want to be anywhere near it. Having said that, I still will take on people every once in a while that do sessions with.
Well, when these, do you think that they're, some people think, oh, their planet had blown up or something happened on their planet, something bad, so they've come here and now they just want to blend in and have a new place to live, is what some people think.
Yeah, we don't know the backstory. Nobody knows, no matter what they think. And that's the dying planet theory is one that I thought myself early on. But there's no evidence for it at all. There's zero evidence. It may be true, but there is zero evidence. However, they have to have facilities to keep restocking their UFOs. There's a whole long backstory that's going on here that we have no knowledge of whatsoever. And it's hard to imagine that they would just live on these, that the insect-like ones would be here forever, never ever going anywhere else. There's got to be something else going on, and that we don't know about. And it could be, and when UFOs first came on the public notice in 1947, and then people really got into studying them, and they wanted to learn about their propulsion system, which of course is not possible, and they want to learn about where they came from. Well, it doesn't matter where they came from. It is of no concern. They didn't come from here. That's all you got to know.
Do you think they're living like the hollow Earth and they're down in the Earth? Do you think they're on the other side of the moon or Mars, or they just live stationary in the space, or what? What do you think?
We don't know any of those things. We know that they're not on the other side of the moon. That's nutty, as far as I'm concerned.
You think that's nutty?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I can't see any logic in it, other than the fact that we can't see the other side of the moon. But we can't see them when they're in the sky. What difference does it make? So, and the concept of the base is a human concept. This is a very, 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 I can count 100 berries here, 100 berries of being above us in terms of their technological and neurological abilities. And so we don't even think of that. Now, people have said, well, they come from the planet, and then they named some planet for me, Zeta Reticuli or whatever, and all that sort of stuff, which is actually a dual sun system, dual solar system. But they cannot tell us where they come from. It is literally, I'm speaking literally, it is literally not possible. Because even though there's an awful lot of stars in the sky, hundreds.
There's hundreds of them, exactly.
And some of them we've named Jupiter or whatever, and some of them we put numbers on, M8384 or whatever. But there's 10 trillion of them that we haven't named or numbered, and that's probably where they came from. So they can't point up and say, that's how my star Quackwork, which, that's where we come from, Quackwork. And
well, I guess Betty Hill got something like that, right? But
we have to be very careful with Betty Hill's map, and people want to lunge at my throat when I say that. And right. I knew Betty for many years and all that, but we have to be very careful, because consciously remembered events have the most confabulation. And if she saw a map, of which people don't see, they don't need no stinking map. If she saw a map on the wall, and then she was able to recreate it with all the various planets and here and there, what is the possibility that she got one planet just a little bit off? Let's just say about 1 billion miles. Well, I mean, unnoticeable. You got to be careful. You have to be careful.
Well, what is, before I let you go, we actually went a little 30 minutes over what you wanted to give, and I apologize for that. You and I can talk forever about this kind of stuff and love it. But what's probably the most intriguing thing that you've learned that one of them found out on the ship, or maybe with a hybrid, that just blew your mind in a way of wow, whether it was a good way or a bad way? What was it? I mean, I'm sure all these things kind of took you away along the way, but what is something that you just can't let go of that was really, whoa, what is this? Good or bad?
Well, I can't really say that. There's nothing that stands out, because everything was sort of a gradual, illogical situation over the years. But I'll tell you my favorite story in Walking Among Us, which is a story that most people just gloss over, but I thought it was astounding.
That's what I'm looking for. Excellent.
Well, but when I tell the story, it's going to sound
I'm going to say that's so wimpy.
It was Betsy being in her home. Her husband is away at work. Her kids are in school. And she would have Jamie, her Hubert, come in and all. But every once in a while, she would entertain a hybrid who was a caretaker for kids, and he'd bring the kids to her house, and they'd look around her house and all that sort of stuff. And he did this happened with one kid, and he was about 10 years old, or maybe he was 9 years old. They don't know how old they are. They don't know. They have no birthdays because they're taken out of a jar. Wow. The date is not written down. They don't know
no
dates.
Born on date or anything.
So they don't know how old they are, but. She took him on a tour of her kitchen, and she showed them this and that and various things in the kitchen. She'd done this before, and she's done this afterwards with kids as well. And I remember one kid, might have been this one here, he was in trance. She pulled out a drawer, and he looked at the rails on the side of the drawer when the drawer pulled out, and that's what he was interested in. Look at that. And, but that's not it. So anyway, he said, look at the drawer at the kitchen or whatever. And the caretaker is there watching this whole thing as an adult. And the caretaker and Betsy go into the living room with the kid, and the caretaker and Betsy sit on a couch. The kid sits in an upholstered chair, but he doesn't, I can't do it here. He sits right on the absolute edge of the chair. And she said, and there was a to-do about the color. There was a cover over the chair, and he said to her, "Why do you have the cover? Why is there a cover here?" She said, "Well, the chair was here when we bought this house, but we didn't like the color, so I put a blanket over it," is what it was, or something like that. So he looked underneath the blanket or cover, and he said, "Oh, he liked the color. The color was fine. Oh, he liked the color a lot underneath the chair." And then he sits back right on the edge, very edge. The caretaker says, "Sit back." So he moves back a little bit, and he's still sitting bolt upright, and he won't go back to the back of the chair. And Betsy is looking at this, and she figures it out. Why is he doing this? She says, no, you don't understand, to the kid. If you go all the way to the back and lean back, you won't fall through. It's not so soft that you'll just, tip over or fall through. You won't. It's hard back there. So he gets up out of the chair and he walks around to the back and he feels it. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, it's hard. So then he slowly nudges himself towards the back, still being fearful. And he finally sort of leans up against the back a little bit, but he's still sort of bolt upright. And I thought about that, and I realized there are no upholstered chairs on a UFO. Mm-hmm. It's probably the first and only one he's ever seen. He usually sits on a square that doesn't have a back at all.
Right. That's what you had said before. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is one of the more stunning. Everybody reads that and they don't think anything of it. But I read it and boom.
Well, I get it. That's really interesting. And that is, it's those little things that maybe if you ever do run into one, it's watching them learn something new at an age where we'd be like, what's wrong with you? Where'd you come from?
That's right. Yeah. The one thing you would find if you were to talk to a hybrid and not know it was they would be amazingly naive as long as they just first came here. But they're really quick on the trigger. They're good learners, and everything that they learn, they remember.
They seem to be pretty nice. It seems like you haven't heard of irate ones, have you?
Not the hybrids yet, but I've heard. But a lot of the hybrids are violent. They can violence if you keep talking to me, for example. They will resort to violence. There are certain ways in which they resort to violence. They can take a thumb, push it hard into a person's cheek at a certain place and cause pain there. They got a nerve that they can press on. And push people to the floor and pick them up by their hair. That happened. That's happened to a bunch of people I've talked with, who would think, and there's other things like that too. And there's they will actually cut people sometimes with knives. That happens. And this is all done through security hybrids or through what I call personal project hybrids. You have to read the threat to figure out all that. And so there is that. And these are recalcitrant people who are seeing me, which is how I know it. And but they're also recalcitrant because sometimes they won't do what the aliens want them to do on board, even though they're under control. It's a question of how much control they're under. Sometimes they'll find themselves not under so much control. Like, for example, one woman was walking down a hallway, and she had a gray alien on one side and one on the other side, and her arms were up, and they were holding her arms up as she walked down, and she realized she had control. She whipped her arm out of the one hybrid and went whack like that, and hit him directly in the eye, and she could see a white liquid substance coming from his eye. And the other one grabbed her, and somebody else came. They rushed her onto a table. They put her in restraints, and they told her, "Don't do that. That's not good. It's not very good. You should never do that." That things like that happen also on both ends in a way.
Interesting. Just a couple more questions for you. What do you think of?
I'm starting to pant.
I know. Sorry. Hey, my contacts are killing me with these lights that I have. What do you think of Bigfoot?
Well, it's I have friends who are heavily into finding Bigfoot and all that. This is one of those things where having one in hand is doable.
You think?
Yeah, it's doable. Eventually, you're going to run across a Bigfoot, and you're going to be carrying a shotgun. and if it's not an alien, you'll blow his head off. That should happen eventually, sooner or later. So then we'll know. That's a doable situation. In the meantime, I reserve judgment then.
Right.
Until that happens,
And that's a whole other thing too, because some people believe you can kill one, and other people are like, "There's no way, you never will." And it's funny that you put it that way. If they're alien, you won't be able to do it, and
right.
And it's very, very interesting. And Stan Gordon, he's from that area,
sure,
not far from you at all. And Pennsylvania is known for UFOs and Bigfoots, and then Bigfoot's getting off of UFOs. So
yeah, well,
a lot of crazy stuff.
remember, consciously remembered events are oftentimes the least genuine. But and so when people have told me that they've seen all sorts of different beings on board, and then when they get on board, they realize that's not true.
Has anyone ever said when you put them under about have they described a Bigfoot?
Nope.
Nope.
Never have.
It's
Never
usually a mantis, grays, tall and short, reptilian, and even human-like.
Yeah, insect-like ones, reptilians, gray aliens, hybrids. That's it. Those are your four major groups.
Have you seen the TV show People of Earth?
I have to start watching that. I guess I
want to be there when you watch it. It's hilarious.
Episodes.
You did?
Yes, I haven't watched those shows. I keep forgetting it's there.
Oh, it is so funny. And after reading, your research and your books and things like that, and then watching, it's almost like maybe they did study your books, by the way. And it would be great for them to have you as a cameo or something. It is a very funny show, and they really hit on the facts. And anytime they abduct someone, they look them in the eye and say, "You're special." It's great. They're really jokesters, and it's a really, really good show without a doubt.
Yeah, I liked the two episodes that I saw. I must say, they were fun.
Yeah, well, you do some very serious work, but you have a great sense of humor. And when people interview you audio-wise, they miss. This is one of the reasons I was looking forward to this with you. They miss out on the animation that comes out of you, and you're just hilarious. I could imagine, you being a professor and I being a student. I would have just been like sitting there laughing my whole time at you if I was one of your students. But anyway, hey, I want to say thanks for being here for my live launch and premiere show. I really appreciate that I gave you 2 days notice.
Well, it was my pleasure. I'm glad to help you out, and anything I can do. Just call me again, and I'm at your beck and call.
Oh, I appreciate that. And you saw Leslie King today, right, up in New York?
I didn't, as it turns out. I didn't go up to New York. Where I'll Skype with her, and then maybe I'll come up next week. We'll see.
Okay, all right. Neat lady. I have not met her. Everybody I know knows her. I've not met her yet. I hope to meet her at one point.
Yeah, her uncle was the governor of New Jersey, so we all know it's Leslie Kean.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I should.
No, that's everybody says that.
Oh, okay.
That's what I called her too originally. But then I realized that her uncle was named Kean in the family. It's spelled Kean, Kean, but but they pronounce it Kane. Interesting.
What about Bud Hopkins' stuff? I know that he gave everything to you, right?
Right.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
Where is all that? Were you able to go through everything?
No, it is impossible.
Absolutely.
It is impossible. I need backup. I've got lots of file cases. I have audio tapes, 1,500 of them, if not more. I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of letters.
Well, Dana, what are you going to do with that? I mean, at one point, you were telling a story that you actually had a heart attack, didn't you? And
I did.
Close to, yeah, dude.
Low level, but I've got a stent in my right coronary artery, even as we speak.
Well, I'm glad you're okay. I really am. I'm glad you're here, and I thank you very much. And is there anything else that you would like to say before you go? Anything that maybe we didn't say that you'd like to say to everybody?
Yes, there is. Goodbye.
And this is the personality of David that I love so much. So, and tell us where we can find your books. Besides, I do have it down in this description of YouTube here. But where else can they find you, and where?
Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, or discriminating bookstores everywhere.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again. Can you hold on a second and so
Sure.
I can say goodbye to you?
Sure.
Hang in there. And I want to thank you guys for watching tonight, the live launch, the premiere show of Blue Rock Talk, Earth's Most Interesting Conversations. We're talking about interesting people, places, and things, events, all sorts of really cool things, whether it's, the spectrum of I think my dog was walking around down there. The spectrum of, aliens and UFOs to Bigfoot to remote viewing to crop circles to cures to medicinal marijuana. People, give us your information, what you want to talk about that you think is interesting that no one else is talking about. Let's get in depth. And if you're an eyewitness or ear witness or anything like that, please, we'd like to hear from you as well so that we can talk about it, because this is going to be a fun show and I want you guys to be interactive and be a part of it. We've got a lot to do. So we'll see what happens if I'm going to do this every Thursday night at 9 or 10, Eastern time. If I'm going to do that or be free to do whatever and whenever. That's what I kind of like about this. Don't have to be set. There's no network. There's nobody telling me this is what you got to do and how you got to do it. So it's a nice free kind of feeling, and you can be artistic and you can kind of do anything that you want. So I got a lot of great surprises coming up for you that I don't want to mention yet. They will just happen for you. And in the meantime, I ask for you to like this video if you like it, if you like the concept. I'd love to hear about that. Please comment below of what you'd like to see in the future, what you did like, what you didn't like. The haters are always there. So I hope that those of you that want to reach out with some positivity, that would be great. I like that very much. And if somebody's out there hating, go ahead and take up for me. That's fine too. Those people are rampant. So again, thank you very much for watching, and stick around. And please, because I want you to hang out, because I can't do it without you. And I really appreciate that you guys have been there and you've been supportive and you've been waiting. You really have been, and I appreciate that. So please subscribe. That's what keeps us going. Please continue to watch and check in. When you subscribe, hit that little bell, and that will notify you when something's coming up next. So I want to thank David once again, and thank you guys too. And hey, until we meet again, keep watching the skies and continue to seek out the strange and uncover the unknown with me. Take care. For Blue Rock Talk, Earth's most interesting conversations, I'm Connie Willis. Thank you very much.